Hello, this is John McGurk, the editor of Gript Media, and I want to talk to you today a little bit about fake news, misinformation, disinformation, and all the other buzzwords that you sometimes hear. It's relevant because last week at Gript.ie we published a story that began thusly. A transgender athlete, we said, is leading a women's cycling race in Ireland by a considerable distance. The story, my friends, was true. A transgender athlete is leading a women's cycling race in Ireland by a considerable distance. And because it was true, it generated a lot of interest. It was one of our most read stories of the week. It was widely shared. The reason it was widely shared is obvious. Around the world, this issue of biologically male people competing in female sports is growing in salience, and more people are concerned about it. We have in Ireland and in many other countries a gender ID system which allows male people to identify as female and vice versa with the mere stroke of a pen. And many people are concerned about what this means for female sports. It's an important issue, and it's something that as journalists and as people in the media we have to be on top of and keep you appraised of. Which brings me back to the topic of misinformation and disinformation, because in recent years one of the things that has emerged as a dominant trend in the media is the idea of the fact check. And so we were surprised a couple of days after we published our stories to see that we had been fact checked by a competitor publication, the Journal.ie, which will be known to many of you in Ireland. The Journal said that our story was misleading. The reason that they said it was misleading was because, in the words of their journalist, the transatlantic way is not a truly competitive race. Here's the problem with that. The problem is the transatlantic way is a race. When you enter the transatlantic way race, you have to sign up to the race rules. When you're partaking in it, there is a race leaderboard. When you look at the categories, the Journal said, by the way, that there were no gender categories in the race, so therefore our story was misleading. You see that in fact the categories are itemized by gender, and you see that a transgender athlete is leading the race by a considerable distance over her nearest female opponent. So what have we here? What we have here, I fear, is a stellar example of how fact-checking can often be abused in order to suppress stories that some people would rather the public didn't read. We have seen with the attacks, for example, on J.K. Rowling and others, that there are many people in the world who will go to very severe lengths to stop people having concerns about these issues. I fear that's what's happened here, because in order to avoid our story being true, the Journal said that race isn't a race at all. And in so doing, they have then managed, because they are partnered with Facebook, one of the largest social media companies, to get everybody who shared our story labeled as a purveyor of misinformation and disinformation. This isn't new. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw powerful companies like Kinsen partnering with the Department of Health and the Department and other government departments to identify people spreading information that they thought was unhelpful online and have those people's voices suppressed. In many cases, that information that they were identifying was as simple as promoting the views of a doctor who mildly dissented with the length of a lockdown. This is an abuse of power. It is a power which has been granted to some in order to stop others from having a voice that is equal to theirs in society. In this case, we have a situation where there are journalists in one media outlet who have the power to stop another media outlet from reporting an accurate story simply from engaging in some contentious word twisting. That is not the purpose of fact-checking. It is an abuse of fact-checking. At Gript, we will not be deterred by it, and we will keep calling it out. We were the outlet who reported during the pandemic on the goings-on with Kinsen and the Department of Health. We are the outlet who persistently, through my colleague Ben Scallon, asks and challenges ministers to account for things that other media outlets will simply do not or would not dream of asking them about. And we are not a media outlet that is going to back down in the face of people with an agenda questioning factual stories. So that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to thank you for your continued trust in us and assure you that our reporting is something that we will continue to stand over and defend and not be intimidated from sharing. And if you could find it in your heart to support us for that, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much.